Welcome everyone to Atlas Core Learns From. And today we are joined by Raj Kumar. He is the founding president and editor-in-chief of Devex, social enterprise and media platform that reports from the front lines of the fight to achieve the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And it has a global development community of over 1 million global development professionals, over 100 staff in 4 locations. And a few years ago, Raj wrote a book called The Business of Changing the World: How Billionaires, Tech Disruptors, and Social Entrepreneurs are Transforming the Global Aid Industry. And I wanted to leave you with one quote out of it that I want to pick up on is, "New aid," and how Raj describes it, supports the most powerful force for changing a person's life, him or herself, which is about leadership. And it seems very connected to something we want to talk about. So Raj, let me jump right in. You lead over 100 people, and that has a lot to do with talent and finding potential in people. How do you do that? Is there an anecdote that you want to share with us about spotting talent and then developing it?
Great to be with you, first of all, Bijan. Great to be with all my friends at Atlas Core, and I have such respect for the work you all do and have had the chance over the years to meet many of the fantastic fellows. So great to be with all of you. Let me just say, the first thing that comes to mind when I hear spotting talent is I think of the mistakes that I've made more than the success that I've had in spotting talent. And I think of some of the most successful, most amazing, talented professionals at Devex who I did not hire, that were hired by colleagues of mine who maybe had I seen their profile or had I met them, I wasn't going to be the one who was sparked by them and see the opportunity. So I try to bring a lot of humility to it, because the truth is everybody has talent, right? And it's really a question of how do you find the right match between the person and the skills that they bring and the organization or the role, and how do you foster them into being, the most successful they can be in whatever that role is. I don't think of it so much as hunting for that diamond in the rough. I think everybody's got some talent, and really what your job is as a leader is to bring that out and to help people flourish. So the number one word that comes to mind for me is listen. I try to really listen. If I'm meeting someone, let's say someone's recommended to me, or I'm at a conference and someone comes up to me and says they're interested in working with Devex, I try not to bring a preconceived notion that, oh, well, you don't have this experience or that experience, you don't fit the standard profile for that role. I try to just listen and put myself in their shoes, and maybe remind myself it wasn't that long ago that I was also trying to fake it till I made it, in the development sector, and everybody has to do that to some degree. So that's what comes to mind for me when I hear this.
Can you think back of an anecdote or someone you have in mind when you think about talent?
Oh, I can think of a couple of these specific individuals that I really was not supportive of us hiring at Devex, and I listened to my colleagues who said, no, this person, they're going to be great. And I was wrong, and they were right. I won't say who they are, but we have a couple of people who are absolutely fantastic, amazing professionals who I didn't spot their talent, right? And so I try to bring that humility from that experience to it. That's the main anecdote I would share. There have been others, on the more positive side, where I met somebody and said, I just see this person could really do something incredibly well. There was an entrepreneur I met at one point who I thought there's real potential here. And I just worked with that person and gave him advice over the years, ended up being their first investor in what's now a successful software company. So I've tried to, really keep this open mind. And I find that's the most important thing in looking for talent and fostering talent.
I love the diamond in the rough metaphor. So what's your advice to those diamonds in the rough, those young, talented people out there, building on your experience? What would you tell them to do?
I guess the main thing I'd say is try to engage on issues that matter to you, as opposed to thinking about your career so much. I think there's a lot of people give career advice, but I found at least that a career is something you do. It's not something you kind of think about or position yourself for, right? So the people I think who have the most success are the ones who are so passionate about an issue or an area that they're out there doing it. And so as an example, as a news organization, if someone tells me they want to be a reporter, the first thing I do is look at, well, what have they written? And, you don't have to be with a publication to write something and to publish it, to put it out there on a web platform of some kind, on a social media platform of some kind. So I'm looking at that. And if they're saying, I'm really interested in these topics, I'm really interested in reporting on it, but they haven't actually just done it, then I question how committed they are and how passionate they are about it. So first thing is, don't try to force fit yourself into some career. Don't just read a lot of advice, just start doing it. Show your passion, display it. And that's easier to do now than it ever was because you can do so much online.
That refers to the entrepreneur and social entrepreneur, right? Last question is, what's a fun fact, something that would make people smile that they may not know about you?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a whole lot I could go on with. The first one was maybe not that fun, so I'll try to end on a more fun one. But I'm thinking a lot about this week as Ukraine. Obviously, it's very much in people's mind. And I actually got to spend quite a bit of time in Ukraine during the Orange Revolution. And it was one of these, things that was not expected, right? I didn't predict, and not many people did, that there would be a revolution at that moment. But I was there doing election monitoring for the election. And suddenly, I look out my window and I'm seeing thousands of people, flowing into the streets, and I followed them. And I ended up, being in the middle of that situation in Kiev for weeks. I saw the protesters when they stormed the parliament, and I met with them when they stayed out and camped out all night in the streets. And it was a moment of just so much euphoria, such a sense of possibility and hope, so opposite of how things are right now. So that's not a story I always tell, and not one that everyone knows about me. So I thought I could share that one now. But maybe another one that's a little bit more on the bright side and more career oriented is that, we started Devex when I was in graduate school at the Kennedy School. And I foolishly thought well, this is something that I'm really interested in and I can kind of get it going, but I could bring in someone else to run it because I need to finish my graduate degree. And I just didn't, to this point earlier about engaging in the career that you want to have, I didn't do that right away. I went out and found someone who was much later in their career, 30 years older than me, who could go and run this. And it became pretty clear that wasn't going to work. We were a little startup out of my apartment in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So I ended up meeting with the dean of the Kennedy School, Joe Nye at the time. And he said, well, what are you doing here? If you came here to work in global development, to launch your career, and you got this idea, why don't you go do that? And so I ended up dropping out of the Kennedy School, thinking, well, maybe I'll just come back later on. And that was 20 plus years ago. So that's a fun fact that I'm really glad I took his advice.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And let's make sure that the lesson you're sharing is not one for scale, right? You're not suggesting for everyone to drop out of grad school, but in your case, it took off like nothing else. Raj, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to partnering even more with Devex going forward.